Hi, welcome to this podcast where we're looking at errors not revealed by the trial balance, and therefore the trial balance will balance even with these errors in the accounts. So therefore there's no indication we've made them. So first one we're going to look at is complete reversal of entry, and this means that the debit entry in a particular account has been credited by mistake, but in the other account that we've done the double entry in, the credit entry has been put on the debit side. So if we look at an example here where wages paid were credited in the wages account. So there's the amount of wages that have already been entered during the course of the year, and they total 11,500. And yet we've gone and put a credit entry in. So what that's done, that's reduced the wages to 11,000. And in the bank account where we should have put a credit entry in, then that's reduced the amount of money in the bank that we think we've got down to, sorry, it's increased it up to 1,880. So if we look on here, the trial balance still balances, but what we should have done with the wages, we should have increased the amount of wages expense by 500. It should have been 12,000. So there's a 1,000 difference here, look, between what the trial balance is saying and what the wages account is saying, and it should have been 12,000 higher. But when we look at the bank account, what we should have done, we should have started 1,380 in the bank. We should have deducted 500 for the money that we've paid out of the bank, and therefore we should have had a balance CD of 880. So if we look on here, the wages account is actually too big by 1,000, and the wages account is too big by 1,000, too small by 1,000, and the bank account is too big by 1,000. Okay, so how are we going to go about correcting this? Well, the first thing we need to do is to get rid of the error. And to get rid of the error, we need to put a debit entry of 500 into the wages account. And to get rid of this error in the bank account, we need to put in a credit entry of 500. And it's still not getting us to the right place. And this is how students sometimes make their stick at the 500. Okay, because that account now would balance off at 11,500, but we know the wages should have been 12,000. So we need to put another entry into the wages account for 500. And now when I balance off my account, it's going to be right. It's going to be 12,000. So two entries together are going to correct it. The first one gets rid of the error. The second one is putting in the correct entry that we should have made. And similarly with the bank account, we need to put a second credit entry in for 500. The first 500 has got rid of the error. The second 500 has put the correct amount into the account. And if we look at it now, the balance CD is going to be 880, and that's what it would have been if we'd done it all correctly. So if I go into the trial balance now, and I put the 12,000 into the wages, and I put the 880 into the wages, in this case, it still balances at 60,900, but I've now corrected the error. Now, if we're doing the correction this way, what I need to do is to put in my journal entry to tell somebody to go and do it, 2 individual debit entries of 500 each. And similarly, in the journal entry, the accountant telling the clerk what to do would go and put in 2 individual credit entries that go into the bank. That would be acceptable in an examination, but the way that this is quite often done, or in fact the way that people would do it in the real world, because they're used to handling these types of problems, they wouldn't need to think about the fact we need 2 entries. They just think automatically, right, I need to double the debit entry. So there would be an instruction given in the general journal to go and put one debit entry into the wages account for 1,000, and that's made up of the two parts of the correction. And then there would be an instruction made to go and put one credit entry of 1,000 into the bank account. And that's instead of making two individual entries for 500 each. Right, I've put you guys some questions to go do if I teach you. And then once you've done the questions, I recommend coming back and looking at compensating errors. Okay, compensating errors are where there are two or more unrelated errors which cancel out, i.e. there's the same size entry on both the debit and the credit side. Or potentially there could be an over recording of a debit entry of $500, for example, and an under recording of a debit entry by $500. But either way, those errors will just cancel out. Okay, in this case here, we've got the wages were undercast. And what we mean by undercast, they've been added up too small. Undercast means that we made an error and the addition is too small. Overcast, besides being a term for weather, also means that when we've added something up, we've got too high a number. So for example, we add something up that should have been 110 and we get 120, we would say that that has been overcast. And there's also been a sales recorded in the cash book, but not in the sales account. So what we should have done is we should have added up the wages and got a balance CD of 11,500. But what we have done is added up the wages and the balance BD is only 11,000, and that's what's currently in the trial balance. And what we should have done in the sales account is we should have started off with sales of 55,900. We should have added on the cash sale, and therefore the balance CD on the sales account should have been 56,400. But we've forgotten to put the sale into the sales account, and therefore at the moment when we balanced off the sales account, we thought it was 55,900. So if you look at the trial balance, that's a figure in the trial balance. This one's relatively straightforward. We first of all need to increase the wages by 500. So in the T account, there needs to be a debit entry, and I've written sales as being the other account because we're correcting the error. The credit entry is going to appear in the sales account. So somebody before that happened would have written an instruction to me to go and put this debit entry in the wages account. And I also need to increase the sales by 500 by putting in a credit entry. Okay, and then a double check, I found all the compensating error. The debit and credit entries in the journal should be equal always, and they are. And then there needs to be a quick commentary put in. And then what we will do on here, we will correct the trial balance now. Because the accounts are right, we can update and correct the trial balance. So the wages should have been 11,500. And we know that the sales should have been 56,400. Okay, and when we've put the two corrections in, just do a quick sum on that. And pull the sum across. Hopefully my trial balance will balance still. It does, but it's at the correct amount. Right, for my students, there are a couple of questions in there for you to do. Obviously, email me if you've got any problems, and otherwise share the answers back to me, and good luck.